through grammar, I think. Where is it? It's in Baltimore. SPL follows that conference, which is what I'm going to.
Okay. Is it there every year?
No, it floats. The year before it was at Chicago. The year before that it was in San Diego, or San Francisco, and the year before that it was in Atlanta. So, you have your quiz, and do you guys want to go over it? I know you haven't had a chance to look at it. So, let's go over it. I'll let you read. You had a chance to look. And we can do the translations last so that we're all together there. For vocabulary, number 1, agapao is I love. Number 2, blasphemeo is I blaspheme or I defile. Number 3, staurao, I crucify. 4, angelo, I announce or proclaim. 5, harao, I see. 6, asteneo, I am weak. Phanerao, I reveal. Apostello, I sin. Zao, I live. Kaleo, I call. Poieo, I do. Plerao, I fulfill. Mino, I remain. Timao, I honor. Laleo, I speak. And katabino, I go down. Number 1, under textual criticism. I don't know why I didn't put points there, but that should be 10 points, I believe. Let me see, 2, 5, 10. Yeah, I think that's what I was doing. Yes. Name 2 types of unintentional scribal errors. Open to anybody. Deutography, good. That's where you write it twice.
You skip to a word with the same ending.
Same ending. That would be homeoteleuton. And then the counterpart to that is a word with the same beginning, homeoarchon. We have letter confusion is one, confusing a for o. Metathesis, where letters get switched around. And then faulty word division would be another. Any of those work. Number 2, list 3 of the tenets of internal evidence. For example, the blank reading is to be preferred. Simplest. Yeah, you could say that the one that best explains the rise of the other ones. I heard one over here. Shortest.
More difficult and then more geographically dispersed.
Correct. The more difficult reading is to be preferred. The shortest reading is to be preferred. The one that best explains the others. Not geographically dispersed. That's external evidence. Sorry.
You can say internal.
Okay, and extra credit would be the Holy Spirit sees the work of your hands. Let's take a stab at it. The Holy Spirit. Get 4 points here, and it's got to be in the right order for the construction. The Holy Spirit.
Oh.
I'll give you an opportunity to change it right now if you need to before we.
I'm going to say O.
Not quite.
Because it's not.
It's not masculine.
Okay.
It's neuter.
Oh, all right.
Spirit is
So it's O.
ta. Good. All right, ta. So which one comes first? Is it hagion or is it pneuma?
So adjective.
What now?
You have an attributive construction, so the article will go the adjective.
It would. So you could do 2 different things here. You can do ta hagion numa, and that would get you 3 points. Or you could do ta numa ta hagion. Either one of those. But if you did ta hagion ta numa, that would be the wrong order. All right, so that's the Holy Spirit sees.
Para with the Yoda subscript.
Yeah, porao for, so you were saying,
Hey.
yeah, so, para, that's what you're saying? Yeah, that's good. You could have just done the simple, lepe. Sees. So the Holy Spirit sees the work of your hands. The work, ta, Aragon. The work, su, singular. And then tone, K, rho. And that su can go up in front here, suta, ergon, tone, kron, or at the end. All right, number 1 for the translation. Thelusin Thelusin hoi laoi basilea al he thelema ton laon ugestin he thelema to theu. Where is our subject? This is open to everyone. Work through it together. Subject.
Boy, that one.
Good, and that means good. So the people, and now where's our verb? What do the people do? They desire. So we've got fellow there, thelusin, it's plural. Present active, indicative, third, plural. So the people desire, and what do they desire? Good, they desire basileia, they desire a king. This sounds like it's coming out of Samuel. People desire a king. And then but, good. Where's our subject? Good, so but, what does that mean? But the will, and then do we have any modifiers for thelema? And that means? Good, so now we've got, all together, we have the people desire a king, but the will of the people, where's our verb?
I said, but who is not.
Good, so translate that. But the will of the people is not. And then?
The will of God.
Perfect. So altogether, the people desire a king, or want a king, but the will of the people is not the will of God. Number 2, ha'agathos aner oikadomese tain gunaika autu para kalois lagos. Where is our subject?
Agathos on there.
Good, and what kind of construction is that?
Attributed.
It's attributive because the article is with the. Good. So translating ha'agathos aner,
The good man.
the good man, and where is our verb?
The opodo.
Oikadomese. Good. And what tense is that? Anything that stands out. It's from, oikadomese is from,
Oikodomeo.
good, oika, da, me'o. All right, so what's changed in there?
Alright, you got the, is it a third declension? Is it, I mean, I see the E and the W, which is the epsilon and omega, which made me think third declension.
Not third declension, it is contract.
Okay.
It is contract. So what we're working with here is oika da me se. Point out in here. Here are the questions remember to ask yourself. Is there anything up in front? Has an augment taken place? So no augment. Has a major stem change taken place? Now, the closest thing we have here is an eta, so we've lengthened a vowel before the sigma, but that is to be expected in the futures of contract verbs, so we just disregard that. What else do we see then? From what we got in that?
Future time augment, sigma.
Good, we've got the sigma. So when we see the sigma, we think either the future or the aorist. And as we've already said, there's no augment here, there's no big stem change, and we don't have an alpha either. So that just leaves us with our future. So it is a future, active, indicative, third singular for your parsing. So the good man will do what? He will, and this is where I was saying it gets a little tricky in understanding this verse, is how you choose your glosses for that word.
Edify.
Will edify, not build up. Now, if you put build up, that's fine. I'm not going to take credit off because of the fact that that's the right translation. I mean, it's within the range. But he's going to edify, and why do we know he's going to edify? It's because of the rest of the verse here, or the example. Tain gunaika autu. He will edify his woman or his wife. And how is he going to do that? Para kalois lagos.
With good words?
With good words, perfect. Because it's her love language. And to wrap up for the quiz, thelusin is from thelo, and it is a present active indicative third plural.
Can you spell that?
Thelo,
Yes.
thelo. All right. That is the quiz. Any questions on that? Good. Did everybody get a chance to read the examples of New Testament textual criticism?
Yes.
Any thoughts on that? We don't have to? Did that give you a good feel as to how the principles of textual criticism are put into play?
Is there a major disagreement with what he's saying?
In Matthew 5:22, he cites major disagreement there, for instance. He says that Metzger's textual commentary says that eke was added to soften Jesus' statement,
Right.
whereas he takes the opposite view, and that it should be included.
But as far as you're concerned, this is pretty reasonable for what's
Yeah.
the different camps are?
I thought that in all of this, he had a very balanced perspective. Now,
Do you have a copy of that?
yes. What you're going to find is that the major differences between people are going to come in as to the weighting that they give specific elements within the internal and the external evidences. So he is going to give a huge amount of weight to geographical distribution. And he made that point throughout the book. He makes that point even in here. Now, there are a number of people that take issue with that because of this. We discussed three major textual families, right? The Byzantine, the Alexandrian, and the Western. Nobody is Western prioritists. You just don't see it. What you find, though, is people that are Byzantine priorists, which means, just do an X there and a star here, or a star in both places. So they either favor the Byzantine text or they favor the Alexandrian text, de facto. They don't favor the Western text largely because it's known to be expansive in certain places. When he says that you give a great weight to geographic distribution, the effect that that has is that it makes the Western text the arbiter between the two fighting parties, right? So it's no longer Western versus Byzantine, it's whichever your mediator of the Western text, which scholars have said to be expansive, decides between the two. And both your Byzantine guys and your Alexandrian guys have an issue with that,
Okay.
especially if it's applied across the board. So take that with what you, for what you will. The alternatives there are to say, I favor the Alexandrian text to the exclusion of the Western or the Byzantine, or I favor the Byzantine to the exclusion of the others. So you don't have a great option. You've got warring parties. And I see his argument, and I value geographical distribution because of the fact that if it's as widespread as the evidence might lead you to believe, then it's unlikely with the travel that takes place that manuscripts are getting crossed as much. So it helps us to say that was probably an earlier reading. But the thing that I liked about the examples that he gave in particular is that, at least with the last one, you got to see how one side of the argument might say that the shorter reading is more viable, but then the other side is you have the more difficult reading. So which one of these do you choose from? You work that through for you. So it allows you to see that these principles aren't to be taken across the board, that other considerations have to be brought in.
It's interesting, all the translations I have on the King James includes that clause.
It only the King James includes ek in there.
I
Without
was
clause.
referring back to Matthew, I was referring back to the last example you referred to, the John 3:18 passage. The Son, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven.
Right. It is a very, very difficult reading to accept it, but you did see how the witnesses lined up there, right?
Yeah, and I like this chart that's we've got on page 52. Describe the sources, the different readings, and how it looks like some of the variants were actual sort of doctrinal helpers to try and fit preconceived notions.
Right.
Just changing it to the genitive. The was in heaven, or the from heaven.
And I think that that was one of the things, at least in that example, that was most decisive for me, is that the two, number 3 and number 4 in that chart, who was in heaven or who is from heaven, explains that scribes are taking issue with who is in heaven. And they have changed it to that in order to soften the reading.
Yeah.
So I would say that who is in heaven is both the more difficult reading and the one that explains the rest of the others. So
That's a good point too. Yeah. What is the Belpavarian reference?
Sahidic and Bohairic. Their Coptic is it's an Egyptian language,
Right.
and there are two different dialects: the Sahidic dialect and the Bohairic dialect.
Okay.
And there are manuscripts that evidence both of those as early translations of the New Testament. And it's telling you that both of those are in agreement with that reading.
Was Egypt a fertile ground for early manuscripts?
Oh yeah, Alexandria area and Egypt area, very much so.
A nice dry climate.
Oh, you mean for preserving manuscripts? That I'm not
Or
sure
at least
about.
a source.
But there's a great deal of Christian activity in the area. so that is textual criticism. I hope it was beneficial to you. As we continue to work through these various steps of exegesis, the first of which was textual criticism, we'll learn more and more about it, and then we'll start to put it together in a big whole. So right now it's left out there dangling, but at some point, once we get a couple more skills under our belt, we will take a passage and we will go through together. Let's look at the textual variants in this passage. Let's look at the lexical value of these words. Let's look at the syntax, and we'll build our way up to what we're actually trying to achieve. And then we get to chapter 20, participles. Did anyone other than Debbie get a chance to look through chapter 20?
Got about halfway.
Okay. Are we intimidated?
Yes.
Yes. Susan, you look unfazed.
No, she was phased.
She's got the gift.
That she does.
The endings might take a while. That was what just went glazed over.
All right, let's start with the beginning, the nature of a participle. If you did some of your reading, this will be a little bit of rehash, but that's okay. A participle is going to be a verbal adjective. And what he means by that, verbal adjective. So it shares qualities with a verb and qualities with an adjective. So take, for instance, the sentence, the one who sees the dog ran after him. The one who sees, or the boy who sees the dog. Now, if this was the only part of it, then we could just say, why would you write in such a way? Why would you speak in such a way? Why don't you just say the boy sees the dog, right? But what we're doing here is who sees is modifying our subject, the boy or the one. So this is, grammatically speaking, your entire subject. The boy who sees the dog runs after it. So here's our verb, and here's our prepositional phrase, just like the rest. So that is where we get our adjective part, because it's modifying our subject, the boy, just as if the blue boy sees the dog, right? Blue is modifying our subject. But it also has the verbal aspect because of the fact that it's an action, right? He's seeing. So your participle has both verbal and adjectival qualities. This is only one use of our participle, and we'll get to the others. But suffice it to say at the moment, it shares qualities with our verb and our adjective. The second thing we need to know about participles in Greek is that instead of having all of those nasty little tenses, we only have present, aorist, and perfect. Just present, aorist, and perfect. In terms of aspect, present tense will stress your progressive aspect. He is reading as opposed to he reads, right? It's stressing the continuous nature of the action. Aorist is aoristic aspect. What we're saying here is it's simple action. Your aorist participle is going to be the most common participle. If you see it in a different tense, it will be stressing something. Perfect is perfective aspect. He has seen. get that confused with the imperfect tense. Alright, if this is confusing you, do a memory dump. It's important, but if it's overwhelming, don't worry about it. This is what you need to know. You have present, aorist, and perfect. You still have your active, middle, and passive voices, but they won't be so bad. In order to form our participles, we will take a stem of the verb, and we will add to it, depending upon our tense, first, second, or third declension endings. So if you look on page 144. Paragraph 130. And we're looking at this little chart. Page 144, bottom of, we're looking at the present active participle. And then we need to make some space. I'll do it right here. So, for our masculine, present active participle, we have lu. And then we add own. That takes our stem, and we're adding third declension. This is for the masculine active. Probably do it in the right way for you. Present active part masculine. Lu own. What do you think the genitive is going to be?
Cheating, antos.
Yep. Same endings as your third declension. Luon, luontes, luontas rather, lu, on T. So remember, sa, si, os. Lu, on, ta. Lu, on, tes. Lu, on tone, es own, sios. Here is the tricky one. Lu, si, or lu, sin. Why is that tricky?
It turns into he.
Well, not just that,
Said will set us out.
not just that.
But loosen.
You're-
Isn't that an ending for
You're on it.
the mega verb?
Mm-hmm. Luusin is your third plural for your regular verb. So this could mean they loose, or it could mean the ones who loose, or to the ones who loose, or for the ones who loose, or any of those by the ones who loose. It can either be a participle, or it can be a regular verb. And we're going to do this all the way through the rest of our paradigms here. So for your present active participle, your neuter, what are we going to do? Well, one thing we're going to do is these all stay the same. Just because their neuter. They've done that throughout all of Greek so far. This will be, and I'll switch up the colors for you, on and on, just like it has been. So it's lu on and lu on. And this is on ta and on ta. For your feminine, and we won't write them all out, but you still are taking the root, and here is the biggest trick for the feminine. You're adding an us inside the word. And then from there, we take our mixed endings from the first declension. Right? Yes. Lu, sa. Lu, says. Lu, say. Lu, sas. Lu, sa, lu, son. Lu, sais, lu, sas. Sorry. As, on. Usan. It's for your present active participle. Your masculine forms, your feminine forms, and your neuter forms. I wrote that out just so that we could see how the verb or the participle is constructed. But in reality, if we know our first, second, and third declension endings, all we have to do is know where to apply them. So for our present, we apply them in this way. The third declension for the masculine and the neuter, and then the first declension for our feminine. And we're adding the oops. From there, you need to know that just like in your indicative, the second aorist is taking the exact same endings. The only difference is that we have a stem change. So if you remember, lapon, or lapo rather, in the second aorist becomes lipon. Well, it truly becomes elipon. But here, we're only going to use that and then attach these endings to it. And he gives that as an example right there. Here's some more good news. Your ame verb. It's almost as if you don't have to learn it at all. If you know your third declension endings, then it is your third declension ending itself, just the ending. So we have on tas, and he says etc., but if we're going to do it all the way out, it's on tas, on t, on ta, on tes, on tone, usen, on ta, tas rather. And the same all the way through that with the feminine as well. So usa, uses, use, usan, usai, uson, usois, usas.
Alright, so basically, the endings you choose, you keep the stem, the endings are based on whatever the noun or subject is, whether it's feminine, masculine,
Right, so in that sentence I gave you to begin with, the boy who sees the dog. So boy in Greek, or let's say the man who sees the dog. Man in Greek would be masculine. So our blepo is going to take our masculine singular in order to agree with man. Just like our adjectives agreed in case, number, and gender, so also our attributive participles will agree in case, number, and gender. Same principles that we've already learned. It's just applying it to the new concept of participles. On the next page, we have our aorist active endings. Aorist active participle. What do you think is going to be characteristic of your aorist?
Sigma alpha.
Sigma alpha. For those that weren't in the class when we were talking about it earlier, we learned to associate the augment with the aorist or the imperfect and the indicative. But there are no augments outside of the indicative mood. So instead of learning to see the aorist based upon the augment here, we're going to learn to see it based upon the sigma alpha. And you look in the chart there, we have lusas, and here are our third declension endings again. Sasia, asonsia. So lusas, lusantas, lusanti, lusanta, lusantes, lusantone, lusasin, lusantas. And then again, we have our feminine endings. The thing to observe about your feminine is that we have an additional sigma in there, just like we had the usa here. So we're still keeping that extra sigma. So we have the sigma alpha, lu, sigma alpha to indicate the aorist, and then another sigma for our feminine, and then our endings, our mixed first declension endings. Lusasa, lusases, lusase, lusasan, lusasai, lusason, lusasais, lusasas. And our neuter, as always, gets our on ending and our ah ending, and the rest of them are taken from the masculine. So lusan, lusantas, lusanti, lusan, lusanta, lusantone, lusasin, lusanta. Before I go any further, I should ask everybody, I guess, is this helping you with your endings? Because I think that everybody that I asked about participles so far said the endings are going to be difficult for you to get. Is this helping? So we've seen these, and I know that the third declension we don't have down nearly as well as we got the first and the second declension. Part of that is because of the fact that, well, we worked with the first and the second declension for 15 chapters before we got to the third, and now we've gone 2-3 chapters after learning the third declension and keep on piling on top of it. So it seems to be a little bit unfair to the third declension. It's always hated by Greek students because you don't learn it as well, but I think it's just because you don't have that time with it that you do with the previous declensions. Okay, now that my diatribe is over, then we have our passive, our aorist passive forms. What is characteristic about our aorist passive?
Theta.
Our theta eta, right? In this instance, it's not an eta. It sounds the same though as theta epsilon iota. They are passive. They are passive. And we're, again, using our third declension endings for the masculine and the neuter, and our first declension for the feminine. So lu is our stem, the is for our aorist passive, sasias, asonsias. So luthes, luthintas, luthinti, luthinta, luthintes, luthintone, luthesin, luthintas. Our feminine is luthesa, lutheses, luthese, luthesan, luthesai, lutheson, luthesais, luthesas. And that means having been loosed. Alright. Remember, and this is the same as our indicative mood, with grapho, we don't have the theta. it drops out, but we do have the the epsilon iota. He's got that example there. So graphes, graphentos, not graphes, or grapheson, graphentos, yeah. You see how difficult it is for me to do it. All right? So far we've covered our present active, our aorist active, our aorist passive, and now we're doing our perfect active, having loosed. What is our perfect have that indicates to us that it is perfect? There are two different features. They're still the same.
Reduplication and the kappa.
Reduplication and the kappa. Good. So on page 148, for those of you in my edition, or group 4, we have lelukos, lelukatas, lelukati, lelukata, lelukates, lelukatone. Again, it's the same. We have our third declension for our masculine and our neuter, and the first declension for our feminine. This time, though, what do we notice about the feminine?
Pure alpha endings.
Why?
Because pure alpha endings come after an iota.
Good. Do we remember that? So we've been doing the mixed endings, right? Remember when we learned the mix, we said we'll take one from pure alpha, two from pure eta, one from pure alpha in order to form it. So ace, a, on, as opposed to the pure alpha, which is as, on. And it's because the mixed forms you need when it comes after a sigma, or xi, or ki, or any of those letters. But you get your pure alpha when it comes after an epsilon, iota, or a rho. These aren't details that you really need to memorize, because honestly, you don't have to conjugate any of these. We just need to recognize. But that is why it has switched to as, on. All right, that is our perfect active. And then the good news about all of our middle passives, with the exception of the aorist passive, remember in our indicative mood, we had your aorist active, and then you had your aorist middle forms, and you had unique aorist passive forms, whereas you had for the present active, and then present middle passive forms, so they shared the same forms. Same in the participles. Same thing applies. Now we're going to look at your middle and your passive endings. And I will erase this so that we have some room. I like the middle passives in the participles more than any other mood. If you've gotten them, take a look at them, I think you'll quickly realize why. We have, and we'll do the the masculine forms for the present. So blue, 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 blue. We add min all the way throughout. And a mnemonic device for you. Min are passive. There you go. Or middle. Min or middle or passive. And then all we do is add our first or second declension forms. We should know these without even looking at your book. What is our first declension, our second declension forms for masculine? Starting here. As. Oo. O. On. Oi. Own. same all the way throughout. For our feminine, because we wanted to make it feminine as opposed to masculine, we just needed to add, as these will be pure eta, a, ace, a, ain, I, own, ice, os. That's how we build it. Stem, min or passive, first or second declension endings. Same with our aorist. Stem, and then because it's an aorist, we add what? Sigma alpha. And then we add our min because they're passive. And then we add our first or the second declension endings. Same with our perfect. We add what for our perfect at the beginning? Reduplication. Then we add the stem. We add min because they're passive. And our first or second declension endings. And then our second aorist, same way for the middle. Those are your forms. A general rule for you, and the aorist passive is the only exception here, so far as the categories that they fit in, is all of your actives are going to take third declension forms in the masculine and in the neuter. Second declension forms in the feminine. First declension forms. Thank you. First declension forms in the feminine. In your middle and passive forms, excepting the aorist passive, they will all take your first and second declension endings. And on that note, we'll take a break. We'll come back and then we'll look at the different uses and then we'll do some examples.
So when's your semester end? Your reading period?
Sounds right. I think that's when mine is.
Oh, okay.
So is there a crunch?
Oh, there's always a crunch.
Well,
It's been a crunch on since day one.
I know. But then there's time to face the music.
Yeah. Something to grab this semester, actually, since one of my professors canceled my own.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
that helps.
Unless you needed the final in order to pass.
No, it'll be all right.
Do you need help on grading that?
Here's the phone.
We can recognize that chair. Yeah, the same one as next week.
It was actually red.
Yeah.
That's what, you're eligible, or two children away.
My son-in-law is finishing up, he'll graduate from divinity school in December.
First one is that.
He's at Southern and Louisville. And so he's got resumes out all over. So Danielle's been married for 3.5 years. And then Lisa Toby. And then Nathan is the oldest, he attends here, his wife Gretchen. And then Anna is a junior at Carson Newman out in Tennessee. And then Josh is a sophomore in high school. And if Ruthie was still alive, she would be 31. So she was the first. And she died at age 9. But she was supposed to live past age 1. So every day was an extra gift.
What did you got?
She was born with a chromosome problem. She had
12 and 90, 30.
Ruthie's 100% freshman 13, but she's not following
still
the
doing
statistics in
quite well in
the
here.
medical
So-
books. You gotta change your
Because
chapter.
I can't
Well, it's
sit
right at the
next to
top.
you anymore.
Yeah. You graduate in this, yeah. How's the college application process coming?
I have a half tuition to Toccoa. I'm waiting to hear from Carson Newman in terms of the financial aid, and I have to finish the application for the third college.
Nice. Need to talk, I need to think about a midterm for you. I haven't talked about that at all, and it's getting pretty close, isn't it? Do you have one of those schools that you prefer?
I'll most likely be going to Toccoa next year.
Focusing on,
Elementary ed. Probably won't ever use this class, but I still like it.
You never know.
hopefully you will use it, at
I
least
mean,
in your
not
personal
professionally,
studies.
yes.
Yeah.
You don't know, you know, who your future son-in-law might be. And you can say, okay, I disagree. But in the Greek, and it's like, yes, let's look at the Greek.
Us seminary students are horrible, aren't we?
Poor Tony. But who can challenge him is not his mother-in-law.
There you go. Yeah, what would that be like? Starting right
Well, but you know, you sit under certain people and they say, well, in the Greek, it really means this. And in the Greek, it really means that. And it's like, well, you know what, if it was printed this way, then why are you saying it's different?
Yeah.
So it's like, I want to make up my own mind,
Yeah.
if I can. It's like, oh dear. It's third question. Okay, we'll just pass on this. Wait until eternity to get the correct answer.
Give me 1 second before we start back up. I need to make sure I'm. All right, I think I'm good. There are a lot of different uses of the participle. We'll start by saying that. But let's go ahead and limit them down to 3 basic categories. What were our 3 categories for the adjective? Attributive.
Predicate.
Predicate.
Substantive.
And substantive. To remember, our attributive was the red ball. The ball is red, and the poor ones. Now this category is slightly different. It's still going to be in what's called the predicate position, so that's why I make the direct association with our adjectives. But this is called the adverbial use of the participle. I'll put a light red for that because it's not going to be that sort of construction. It'll be the same construction in the Greek, the same position in the Greek, but it will have a different meaning. So with the attributive adjective, our article was where?
With the adjective.
Article was with the adjective. So here, our article will be with the participle. In our predicate position, the adjective was with, the article was with the noun. That will still be the case. In the substantival use, well, it can have an article, but there's no noun. So article plus participle, but no noun, modified. Now let's take a look at that one sentence that he gives you there on page 149 or paragraph 131. Ha anthropos, ha legon, tauta blepe, tandulon. The man who is saying, or who says, or who speaks, any of those would work. The man who is saying these things sees the servant. Let that sink in for a second. If you'll recall the example I gave you right at the beginning of the class, it's just like that one. The boy who sees the dog, so who sees the dog is modifying the boy in this sentence. The man who is saying, man is our subject, who is saying is modifying our subject. The man who is saying these things. That whole little bit, ha anthropos, ha legon, tauta, you can describe it grammatically in a number of different ways. You can say that whole thing is a complex subject. Or you could say the participle is modifying the subject, man, so he is the one who's seeing. And what is it that he's seeing? Our direct object of the participle is these things. The man who's saying these things sees the servant. Spend enough time there. The next one is ha legon, tauta, blepe, tadulon. Everything in that sentence is the same, except we have dropped what?
The man.
The man. We've dropped the noun. So now our participle is going to take the place of that noun. It will become like a noun itself. The one who says, the one who is saying, or even the man who says. Because remember, we can do that in Greek with substantival constructions.
With says and is saying, is it putting it, you said that the tense is emphasized different aspects, so is this changing tense or staying the same?
It's this tense is staying the same, is saying versus says is stressing the aspect, progressive aspect, the continuative nature. Sometimes in translation that stress though gets overwhelming and bunches up to where the sentence is difficult to understand. Which is why those are different options. Now we have legon, tauta, ha anthropos, blepe, tandulon. What is the change that we've done here? There's no article with legon, and it has changed positions. It's gone to the front, right? That's the predicate position. Now, we have while saying these things. This is where we get that adverbial element from. Time, temporal markers like when, while, those are adverbs. They modify the time in which the verb or the action of the verb takes place. So while saying, or while he is saying, or saying these things, the man sees the servant.
So because there's no article with
The participle.
Lego,
Yes.
you could say why. That's the proof.
It is. Now these are our three basic categories. And for these three basic categories, our translations would be something to the effect of who is saying, the man who is saying, the one who, because we're making it a noun, or while, or we can just go as simple as adding ing, saying these things. That is a very simplistic way of dealing with participles. And it may be just what you need to not get overly confused. We flip the page. We're still on paragraph 131. We're just going deeper down that rabbit hole. He talks about adjectival use, substantival use in more detail, and the adverbial use. We've really just covered the adjectival and substantival in sufficient detail, so we'll look at the adverbial. There are two different ways that you can render adverbial participles in reference to time. If it is a present participle, we say while or when. It stresses contemporaneous action. Simply put, it stresses that the action is take place at the same time as the main verb. So in our beginning sentence, when the boy sees the dog, he runs after. Or while he sees the dog, he runs after it. The seeing and the running is taking place in the same time frame. If the verb is in the aorist tense, it stresses antecedent action. So that means before the action of the main verb. Taking our main sentence again, having seen the dog run, he runs after it. The boy runs after it. Or after the boy sees the dog, he runs after it. And he gives you examples of those. While saying these things, the man sees the servant. Versus apon tautaha anthropos plepe ton doulon. So we've gone from legon to apon. Having said these things, or after he said these things, the man sees the servant. Still sticking with me? Good?
I hear the zoos.
Participles are distracting enough. The zoos are even more. Okay.
Now, apon is what is usually the word translated as to speak?
To speak, it's just the aorist form of Lego. That was the other one I was trying to think of for you at the beginning of the class. Trying to skim through you to make sure we're getting our uses without taking up too much time. Do read through this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this is your homework over the break. Read through this chapter 2, 3 times. I don't think you have any vocabulary.
No, it's just sentences.
Yeah. So read through it. Read through the examples. Study the examples. I have the tendency to see an example and say I know better than to look at it. Don't do that. Study the examples. It gives you a lot of them. And I really don't know better. I find myself struggling when I do that. Now, in that little 5 there, we have the usual negative with a participle is may. Remember when we memorized that word and you're like, why did I memorize that? We haven't gotten outside of the indicative mood. We are now outside of the indicative mood. So to negate a participle, instead of using ook, or ooks, we use may. So in that sentence, ha anthropos, ha me legon, tauta blepe tan dulon, it is the man who is not saying these things sees the servant. In 7, we have what is called a periphrastic construction. It's an annoying name for it. It's an annoying construction as well. Because you could just say, for the first example he gives you there, lego ton dulon, right? I loose, or I am loosing the servant. But instead, they go a roundabout way of saying it. A me luon ton dulon. And translating it, you get the same thing. I am loosing. What he says there is that the reason you would do that is to stress the duration of the action. Stress the duration of the verb. All right. Moving on. All right, paragraph 133. We encounter a thing called the genitive absolute. Pause. So far, we have studied the attributive, adjective, who is, the man who is seeing, the adverbial, and there are 2 different ways that we learn that one so far. Contemporaneous action, it takes place at the same time, when or while, or antecedent action, takes place after or before the main verb. So after he saw, he does such and such. Contemporaneous would be while. So same time, contemporaneous is your present, before time of the main verb is your aorist. And then we have substantival use, the one who. That's bad. That's reversed. And nobody corrected me. Sorry about that. Let's just go ahead and correct it outright. Then we have our periphrastic construction, which is to use a form of a me with a participle. And now we have the genitive absolute. This will be a participle in the genitive case put at the front of a clause. And you will translate that when. A pontes tauta exalthon hoi apostoloi. When they had said these things, the apostles went out. Epanton, ton, matheton, tauta, exalthon, hoi apostoloi. When the disciples had said these things, the apostles went out.
Is there just a plain word for when?
There is as well, yeah, hate.
Okay, so, but when, if I'm understanding right, when you see a word in a participle form in a genitive ending just at the beginning of the word,
At the beginning of the
a
clause.
clause, then that's when you stick the when in.
Mhm. Yep. So the reason this is called the genitive absolute is because of the fact that technically that clause, the genitive absolute clause, sort of hangs. Here's the thought of your main clause, and your genitive absolute sort of hangs off here. And you can put a little hole there. It's disconnected, it's sort of hanging there. Because take for instance the first example, when they had said these things, the apostles went out. Or better yet, a second example makes it more clear. When the disciples had said these things, the apostles went out. You notice how the disciples are not the subject of the main clause. Good, okay. Most people don't catch that. So that's why it's called the genitive absolute. It is relatively disconnected from the overall thought of the clause. We will get to a point where we add on to these, and I'm kind of hesitant. I don't want to overwhelm you, but at the same time, knowing some of those different categories might help in our translations, because he's always putting those in there to trip you up. Because you've got your New Testament texts here to go back and check it by. This may help you. If it doesn't, disregard. Your adverbial use can also, we've covered time, right? Manner, means, cause, concession, condition. These are the other uses of your adverbial participle. So this would be translated when. Manner or means would be by means of reading the book the boy learned. Cause would be because he learned. He is smart. Concession, though he learned, he is still stupid. Condition, if only he had learned, he would have such and such. So maybe write them down in your notes, but if they're not helpful to you, then what he's going to focus on are these, the basic categories of attributive, adverbial, time. This is what we're covering now, and then substantive. Now let's do some translation. Because this is all probably still sitting up there in the abstract. Let's put it to work. Eilthen ha Jesus eistain Galileon, that's Galilee, Keruson ta euangelion tu thetu. What is our subject? And we'll do this all together.
Something about Jesus.
Okay, good. So Jesus, and then what did he do? He eilthen. He came, or he didn't came, because that would be in the present, right? Jesus came or went, yes. Sorry. Jesus came or he went, eistain Galileon. Hastain Galileon. Into Galilee, and now you know the verse, but let's explain it. So Jesus came into Galilee, kerusso, preaching, good, preaching the gospel of God. Now, what does preaching go with? What type of participle is this?
Present active.
It's a present active, good, present active participle, masculine what?
Singular noun.
Masculine singular nominative, perfect. And now that might be able to help us to do exactly what she's going to do anyway, which is tell us which sort of participle this is. It's actually attributive. He came preaching. Not he came when preaching or while preaching. And I know that there is no article with that, but it's not in your predicate position.
I get who is and while confused in English.
Yeah. So our keruson is agreeing with Jesus. He came preaching. 2. Eucharisto to theomu pantate akuon su tain agapein kai tain pistin hain ekes proston kurion iesun kaies pantas tus hagius. Where's our verb?
Eucharisto?
Good. And it means I give thanks. To theomu.
To my God.
To my God. Pantate.
Always.
Always. I give thanks to my God always. Okay.
The next clause, hearing your love. Do we add an out? Of?
Well, this can be
Or is it half?
sorry, I'm got them going and them going. I'm trying to work out the way to explain this to you best, and it is escaping me at the
Well,
moment.
akuo is the I form of to listen.
Right,
Which tense?
in the present.
In the present.
Mhm. And
So
we have
It's I hear, or I am hearing.
we do have a new on the end there, so it's telling us it's the participle. We have our own ending. So this is a present
Yes.
active participle.
It's in the same form as Caruso in 1. So,
Yes. So the way I would translate this is I give thanks to my God always when I hear about your love, or when I hear of your love. Very simply, without all that translational flash, I give thanks to my God always, hearing your love. So you can get there even working from the simplest. When you have a question about how to translate a participle, just add the ing to it and work your way from there. Hearing your love. And tain pistin.
Something about faith.
And faith. Hearing about your love and faith. Hain, which or that. And then we can translate the rest of it.
You have the
start to work that into your selectional memory. Not select memory. 3. Plepeton Iesun, Erkamenon, Cross Auton, Kai Lege, Ide, Ha Amnas, Tutheu Ha Iron Tain Hamartion to Cosmu. Our first clause, take it from Blepe to Lege.
He sees Jesus coming to him and says,
Mhm.
"Fuck."
Yep. Look or behold. And Steve's probably got it by now. Behold. All right, what is Omnos?
Lamb.
Good. The lamb.
Two theos of God.
Good.
Is relative pronoun.
It can be. Or we could just use the attributive construction, who
And
is.
it's got something about the sin of the world, or
Mhm.
cosmo. I mean, because the Amartion is got to do with sin.
Perfect. So
And
the
cosmo has got to do with world.
behold, the Lamb of God, something, the sin of the world. And Iron is from Iro. It is a present active participle, masculine, singular, nominative. The Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, or who takes up the sin of the world. Number 4, Kai Adon, Alon, Angalon, Iskuron, Katabinon Ta, Ektu Uranu. Anyone?
Alon, a form of Allah.
Yep. Other?
And he saw other in
If it were he, it'd have to be, our endings are on, S, N,
they
or
or
I.
and I saw another angel.
A strong angel.
Yep, another mighty angel. This is a brutal attributive clause because you have angel is your main noun there, but it's being modified by Alon, Iskuron, and Katabinon Ta. All of those three are describing this one angel. He is another mighty angel, Katabinon Ta.
What is it, Katabinon?
What is Katabino? Do you remember that one?
Go down.
To go down, and then this is your participial form. Another mighty angel going down from heaven, or coming down from heaven. Number 5. Makarios ha anagenoskon kai hoi akuantes tus lagus tes prophetes teos kai teruntes ta in aute gegramenon. So our subject is a really complex one. I'm gonna have to think about this one. Let me work through it for a second before I start making pronouncements.
I gotta start looking at words.
this is a beast one. I'm going to help you out on it because this is pure participles. And the Greek language can do this sometimes too. So blessed, Makarios, is the one who reads. Blessed is the one who reads and who hears. And the ones who hear. The words of the prophecy and who keep the things written in it. Do you want me to write that one out for an explanation before we leave? We'll close on that one. Yeah, let's do that. So we didn't explain that you could do this with participles. But you are still able to do a predicate construction. Because we do have blessed here, and blessed is an adjective.
Tears.
Karios. Anna. Genos. Gon. Kai, boy, aku, ontes, us, varus, Okay. Sorry for that long writing out. What type of speech is this?
Adjective.
It's an adjective. Okay? This one? Participle. And then we have kai. What's that? It's a particle or conjunction. And the thing that helps us here is that we're compounding our subject. So it's telling us that this is going to be a next part of the subject. So we need to be able to analyze this as it's on its own to begin with. This participle doesn't have a noun that it's modifying, right? So it's a substantival participle. The one who reads. Now we have a noun, so to speak, and this is an adjective. Our adjective doesn't have an article, our noun does. So this is a predicate construction. That's where we're getting our verb from. Blessed is the one who reads. That makes sense now? We're taking this and using that over here as well, because it's compounded. And that's where we're getting our verb, is from this construction. This needs it as well. Blessed and blessed are, because this is plural, this is our masculine, nominative, plural participle. Blessed are, this is again, what type of participle? substantival. Blessed are the ones who hear. Now, what are these blessed ones reading, or blessed one reading and hearing? They are reading or hearing the words. This modifies those words. They are the words of prophecy, or of the prophecy. And this is further compounding the subject. It's just been placed at the end. And we can treat it just like the rest of these. And keep. And if we really want to be expansive, we can take the blessed and add it in here as well. And blessed are the ones who keep. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. The ta agrees with Gregomenon. And we have a prepositional phrase that's stuck in between. It might be easier for us to think of it like this, though. Actually, it would be even easier if we think of it like that. And keep, here is our direct object of the verb or the participle to keep. Keep the things, this is a substantival participle again, the things which have been written. We have our min telling us that it's passive. The things that have been written in it. What is aute referring to?
Prophecy.
The prophecy. It's agreeing in number, singular, and in gender, feminine. Things that have been written in it. Does that clarify that sentence? A very, very complex one.
It just shows me when the open
And it will come. It will.
well, I can at least read it. Pronunciation is always perfect, but that was before I could, at least out of my normal English alphabet.
But what we'll do for our homework is translate the rest of the exercises, read through the chapter a couple times, and we will talk about that not next week, but the following week. Keep up, because there's going to be a week in between, so you're going to need to keep yourself fresh by doing more translation. If you have the workbook, do some in there. And then when we come back, we will either do a review on this chapter and not introduce any more material, or we'll do the infinitives and then we'll do a review the next week so that we have a break in between each one of those chapters. But either way, we will have a quiz for you. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Have a nice Thanksgiving. Are you gonna get to go visit relatives though?
No, not for Thanksgiving, for Christmas we're going off.
I have Thanksgiving, okay. And, the wagers, I haven't started. Wagers, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Jacob.
Well, thank you for coming again. I think that's the first time I have actually understood that sentence myself. I taught that this past summer, and I just kind of let it sit flat and have the students figure it out themselves.
Cruel professor.
Yes.